Yeah. So I'm gonna start it on the lamb. This lamb is, give you a little bit of background. This lamb's from where we get all our lamb from, Buckner Family Farm. They're up in Longmont, Colorado. It's run by Clinton, Mary Kay Buckner. Awesome people, awesome farm. I personally, I might be biased, but the best tasting lamb I've ever had. But yeah, this one's a little smaller than we usually get. This guy's about 6 pounds, but we usually get anywhere from 80 to 100 pounds sometimes more, but usually between 80 and 100. But I'm just gonna break it down to how we do it in the shop. A lot of these cuts that I'm gonna do today are found in our case. And if you ever are in town, you can swing by and ask any of my butchers about like cuts that aren't familiar. Besides, like Courtney was saying, a lot of people know about the lamb rack and lamb loin and saddles, but a lot of people don't kind of look at the different other cuts that we have, which personally I think the other cuts are a lot better. I'll point them out as we go, but I'm gonna get started here. So the first thing that we do is take off the neck here, just so that it's not in the way when we cut. So
we did already get a question too. I don't know if you know, someone asked what breed this lamb is.
It varies. They have different types. It might be like a Rambouillet and a Dorset mix. It kind of depends. We honestly don't know. We just know it comes from one of their 4 breeds. So. So this is one of my favorite cuts. It is the lamb neck. And usually for this cut, you have to braise it for a long time for it to become a little tender. It's kind of like braising like ossobuco or short ribs. It takes about, a neck this big will probably take at least like 3 hours or so, low and slow. You could also smoke it. Just any kind of low, slow application will do. Just gonna break it in parts here. You could definitely, in a case, we usually do boneless necks, but these are kind of nice to just throw in your pot with the bone in. It's kind of like rustic. Yeah, they're super tasty, especially now when it's winter and a lot of people are braising meats. This is a good one to do.
Someone asked how a lamb neck may differ from goat neck.
One, they're gonna be a lot smaller. So you might have more bone and meat on the goat, but it's just, goats taste a little bit more, I guess gamier would be the word for it. But that's really the only difference as far as taste. Cooking wise, same thing, long application. But both great. We actually used to get goats from Clint and Mary Kay, but we haven't got them in a while. I think they kind of stopped doing that for a little bit, but we're hoping to kind of get back in the goat processing game, because it is kind of crazy to know like goat is the most eaten meat, I think, in the world. I could be wrong, but that's what I thought I had read at one point. So that's your lamb necks that you can just pretty much salt, pepper, sear it off, throw it in a pot, throw some liquid in there, some veggies, and then bring it to a boil and then simmer it, cover it, and in about 3 hours, you got a really tasty meal. Yeah.
Can you
So
explain to
now-
us the different tools that you're using?
Yeah, do you want to know? Or you
Yeah,
want me to
someone in the
go-
chat asked.
Oh, yeah. So this is just a handsaw. We don't have a bandsaw here. And we could get a bandsaw. It'll make cutting bones a lot easier, but we've done this for the whole time I've been there, so I haven't changed it up. It takes a little bit more muscle power, but that's totally fine. And then I have, this is my flexible boning knife here. And then this one's my stiff one. And then this is my scimitar. So this one I use to cut steaks with and bigger cuts of meat with. This is more when I'm like kind of seaming muscles out and I guess going around bone and whatnot. They're just smaller, especially the flexible one. It can go around the bones a lot more.
And what about the like circular white tool you have
Oh,
around the
this,
table?
oh yeah. So this, sorry about that. This is a bone scraper. So any of these like fragments of bone after I saw, because you don't really want that in your meal. So I will just scrape the bone fragments off. You got a nice piece of meat there. And then I've got obviously just some string twine. I'm going to do some roasts later, so I'll use that to tie that up.
There's one other question right now. Someone asked if lamb has to hang.
Yes. Yeah. So this guy hung for about, I want to say like 4 days or so. Yeah. So with every animal, you want it to hang. You want rigor mortis to set in so that you're able to cut it. And it has to cool down properly too. So, yeah, all animals will hang at some point. So I'm just taking out the suet here. And usually here at the shop, we cut it up and then put it in a pot and render it down. And then we strain it out. And that liquid is used as, it's called lamb tallow. And we use it for all sorts of things. We usually confit our chicken legs in it to make chicken leg confit. At one point we've made like lamb tallow candles. We've simmered it with like rosemary and garlic, and then we've put it into like candle modes and put a little wick in there. And as it melts, you can dip bread in it. Kind of cool. And then that's the kidney. We always get these. Some people buy them. We sell kidney, liver, hearts, but the kidneys are the ones that we get with every animal.
I don't
All right.
know if you know, sorry, I don't know if you
Oh,
know
no,
the
go ahead.
answer to this, but someone asked what percentage of butchers are women and if you have observed it becoming more balanced.
Or women.
Yeah.
I think the last time I looked it up, it was like a third. I think it was like a third. I'm not sure now. And yeah, I think it's becoming more balanced. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of women out there that are willing to get their hands dirty, but just like don't know where to start. So I was lucky enough to have somebody kind of willing to take me on. So I think it's just more of the right time, right place. I kind of skipped that ladder of working in a processing facility. So usually you want to start there. And I think once you start there in like it could be anything, like even a Costco, I think you'd find that there are a lot of butchers and meat cutters that are women there, just kind of starting out. But yeah, I'd say it's probably growing. So I'm just opening up the belly here. So this is where I'll get into this a little bit more when I cut this off, but This is where you'll find most of the what we call flat meat. So you'll have your flank, you have your skirt, and right underneath is the bavette. So it's all great, really small on a lamb. I'm sure like a bavette on a cow is about this big. It's about this big on a lamb. So you can't really like cut into steaks like you can on a beef, but you can just like marinate these flaps. They're super thin, but a really quick cooking method. Dice it up or chop it up for fajita meat or anything like that. All right, so next I'm gonna take off the leg part. And I'm just gonna find first vertebrae.
Kelly, have you observed any differences working with American lamb compared to imported?
I don't know personally because all we bring in are Clint's lamb.
Okay. Fair enough.
So we all source whole lamb from Clint. That's all we've gotten. The only time I got a different lamb, it was still Colorado lamb, was in Steamboat when we did a festival there. But as far as taste, because I've tried lamb from Ireland and New Zealand, I don't know. I feel like they're a little bit more gamier. Clint's lamb is good. It's mild. It's a great. His lamb are great to if like you have a friend that doesn't like that lamby taste, to try and get them into it, because his lamb flavor is really mild as far as that lambiness, but the flavor is really good. So I just took off the leg. I'll get to that in a second. I think I'm just going to break it down into primals first. So next I'll be taking off this whole belly breast area with the shank on there. And this whole area that I'm taking off is probably one of the least asked about and wanted cuts, but to be honest, it's one of my favorites besides the neck.
Do you know which cuts are typically used for ground lamb?
For here, we use every part. So all the trim, like you'll see when I cut this leg up, there's some bits and pieces that we don't add in the roast. And then we'll throw that in the trim bin. And that'll happen pretty much with the leg, the shoulder, even the rack lamb. And then we'll chip that all up in the end and then grind it on a certain day. So really, like, our grind is like the whole animal. But I guess in stores they usually do the shoulder because it has a good meat to fat ratio. Same with like beef. A lot of grinds and beef grinds in grocery stores are just the chuck or the shoulder section, which is kind of a shame because there are a lot of cuts that don't need to go to grind, that you can just eat as a steak. I feel like nowadays it's getting more popular, like a cut called the Denver cut's getting more popular. That used to go to grind all the time.
One of the viewers asked if you could kind of be a little bit more specific about your landmarks as you're butchering.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so like for instance, I'm cutting across the rib cage right now. This whole thing that I'm cutting off is in the front here towards the camera are the shanks. So these are the front shanks or foreshanks. And then I just cut through, sorry. I just cut through the rib cage. So the bottom half of the rib cage going to the back of the lamb will be the rack of lamb. And then this front will be the ribs, kind of like the St. Louis ribs on a pork. And then you have all the belly that's kind of like right over here, the obliques, I guess. And on a cow, like this would be a brisket. There's no such, well, there's a thing called like lamb brisket, but it's so tiny that we just kind of add it to breast meat or rib meat. It kind of gets just added to it. So these front shanks, usually we just trim it up here.
That rib cut that you were just talking about, is that technically lamb riblets?
No. So the lamb riblets are gonna be when you French a rack. Usually it's these. So when you French a rack, it's gonna expose these bones. I should see it. Expose these bones up to there, and all the meat that's left when you pull it off. That's what they use for riblets usually. So this right here is the front shanks. I just cut in this knob at the end off because there's not much meat and it just looks a lot better after you cook it. And then as far as cooking goes, it's kind of the same as the neck. So you want to go low and slow. We like to smoke these as well and then braise it to get a nice smoky braise on that. Same thing with the foreshank or the hind shanks or the back shanks, same application. So low and slow, any type of application for that. And I'll get back to these two. I just want to finish up cutting these. So next I'm going to cut off the loin section or the saddle as we call it. So I just keep referring to beef cuts because that's what a lot of people are most familiar with. But this saddle or loin section is what where the New York would be on a cow. It's a little confusing because like with different animals, it's called different things, but just to kind of give you a point of view. So saddle loin. And then the last thing I need to do to separate in primals is separate the rack from the shoulder. Here we do between the 4th and 5th bone. That will vary throughout butcher shops. It gives us a 9-bone rack, which is kind of odd, but we just like the extra meat or extra bone on there. You can definitely just cut it between the 5th and 6th to give you an even number rack, but that's really up to you. Whatever you want to do. So, oh yeah, broke it down to kind of its subprimal or the primals here, to the neck, which I've already cut up, leg, the saddle or loin, the rack, and then the breast, belly, and then the shoulder. So from here, you can really, it's up to you on what you want. I'm just going to cut it down to how we do it in the case. So I can start off with this breast meat here. And so if you can see, you have all the flaps that I was talking about earlier. So you got your flank and then your skirts and then your bavette under there. These are your ribs. Usually here, especially during the summer, we'll sell lamb ribs. So I'll cut that for you, and then the rest we'll kind of use for a boneless rolled and tied belly. And those are good, again, for like similar applications to these, low and slow. You can smoke it, you can braise it, you can cube it up for stew meat, or you can just grind it. So we're just going to take this little skirt off first. And to your question about like where the grind comes from, this is another piece, like this will go to grind. Like I had that little bit of shank meat that went to grind. So you're really getting the whole animal.
Do you guys use the bones at all for like a broth or a stock?
Yeah, definitely. We next door, we have a restaurant next door, and they'll make a nice lamb stock out of it, and sometimes some lamb demi. Here we'll try to use it for lamb demi. Not a lot of people buy lamb stock in our case. They usually just buy a beef stock. But we're kind of fortunate to share space with the restaurant, because they'll take a lot of cuts that customers won't really want.
Someone's asking if you could just kind of walk us through a little bit more specifically what's going on.
Yeah, so right now I'm just I'm cutting off the ribs off this breast meat here, or the breastplate. So I was just trying to go through the bones at the bottom. It's mostly cartilage, so I could use it with my knife, and then up here sometimes it's a little tough. I have to use a saw. But this right here is what I was trying to achieve. So if anyone out there's made like pork ribs, like smoked ribs or just baked ribs, anything of like that nature, you can do the same application with these. So you can rub them. If you got a nice special secret rub, let it sit for like a day and then throw it in the smoker. I feel like they take a little bit longer than pork ribs to break down, but if you give it that extra hour than you would for pork ribs, it turns out really, really nice, like falling off the bone, and put a little barbecue sauce in there and you're good to go. So those are the lamb ribs, which people now, like a lot of people don't buy it, but we've tried to smoke it and sell pre-smoked ribs for people to kind of cut that time and effort. so they can try it. And I can tell you, everyone who's bought those pre-cooked ribs come back for more because they're like, oh, I've never had like lamb ribs, smoked lamb ribs with barbecue sauce. Never thought about it, but it's really, really tasty. And then this right here, this is the belly meat, all those flaps I was telling you about. And usually we just take it off the bone here. So I'm just gonna kind of debone it really quick here.
Back on the topic of the ribs really quick, I may be wrong, but is there silver skin on those that you have to remove?
So there is, but if you're gonna braise it, which the belly definitely needs some braising love, that'll break down in the braise. But if you're doing, like, you'll see like there's some cuts in the lamb leg, like a leg steak, that we'll have to kind of take out the sinew and the silver skin from, because it'll make it tough, because you're just quick cooking that. With cuts like this, there's definitely some silver skin and tendons, but again, it'll break down. If you're braising it for like 3 hours or so, it'll break down and it almost tastes like fat, really, because it has a lot of collagen in it. So once you break it down, it just melts in your mouth. So you don't really need to. So for instance, this cut right here, show you. It's got tons of like silver skin, but I'm just gonna leave it. The most I will do is probably just even it up. Just kind of square it up. And then that's about it. Then we just kind of roll it. And then we'll tie it up. And you can just throw this, sear it in your pot first, like salt, pepper, sear it in oil. And then you can add veggies if you want. And then add this back in your pot, add your liquid, and then again, like 3 hours or so, come back to it. You can even slice portions of it for each person.
How come you roll it and tie it instead of just like throwing it in there as one flat piece?
You could, if you could throw it in there as one flat piece, and but like that's mainly for maybe if you're gonna shred it like into lamb carnitas or something, where you don't need like individual portions. Because once this kind of braises really nice and tender, it's gonna be like you're gonna take it out of the pot and it's just gonna all fall apart if it's not like one big piece. So yeah, I'm just gonna tie this up just for just to show you how it looks. If it's too long, we can always cut in half for you this way. Get two portions there with a little extra leftovers. I'm like a little curious how many people have actually tried this cut who's like on this chat right now.
No one has said anything about it yet.
Yeah, it's not really popular, but it's one of my favorites.
Oh, 2 people have.
Whoa. Yeah, like I said, if your pot's too small, then we'll just put it right there. Even it up. Nice little boneless rolled and tied lamb belly. I'll just lay this out to see, kind of let you see what it was before. All right, so next we'll go on to the leg. So there are so many things you could do with this. I'm gonna do two things. I'll do a bone-in roast. Typically what's asked for during Christmas, we'll have tons of those. Just a bone-in lamb leg roast. But what we like to do is kind of break it down further, do a boneless leg roast and get leg steaks out of it as well. Also, we'll get little lamb tenderloin head, which I'll show you just a bit. It's lays right here in that socket of the sirloin.
Someone earlier asked if there's a difference between hind and front legs.
Yeah, so there hind is back legs and fore is front legs. So fore shank or hind shank or forelegs.
When it comes to like cooking them though, or like,
Oh no, they're definitely the same. Yeah. So you want to go low and slow with any shank off of any animal, to be honest. So right now I'm just kind of getting the leg off the pelvic bone. And it's a little intricate here. Yeah. I'll just do the same for the other side real quick.
are you just cutting through cartilage right now and like the meat, or are there bones right there too?
Yeah, it's definitely all bone. So it's tough to navigate because as you can see, there's this little socket. So it's not a straight cut or anything. Kind of have to like go around. But after, like, you know where it is after so many times of doing it. Um, definitely your knife gets really dull because you're cutting against bone, but that's just the nature of the game. Once you find that socket, it usually just pops out really well.
Someone's just clarifying. So you're cutting the leg from its pelvis right now?
Yep, exactly. So there you go. That's where the tail would be, right here. So two different applications. I'll do the bone in first. That off there. So I'm gonna take the this is the tenderloin head, which we'll take out, and it makes nice little lamb kebabs that we'll sell in the case. It's just like any other tenderloin, really tender. The only thing with the lamb tenderloin is it's really small. I haven't even cleaned it up yet, but it's smaller than my hand. And then for a bone-in lamb roast, we usually saw this sirloin off, and we can use that as a small roast, which I'll show you. And then we'll saw a little bit of the bone off and then kind of French it. So
Is it bad to use your saw through parts of the meat?
What's that?
Is it bad to use your saw like when you're at
It
the meat?
is, so yeah, that is a good observation. If you have seen, I've sawed through the bone and then cut with my knife. If you cut all the way through the meat with the saw, you'll tear the meat, and it just, one, it doesn't look good, and it's not really necessary to ruin the meat like that. You'll just get like jagged edges. It might pull some of the meat out, but so with the bone-in lamb roast, lamb leg roast, you won't get your shank like I will on this guy. Just because you're leaving that shank meat on your leg roast, which is perfectly fine. It just adds to the lamb leg. And right now I'm just what we call Frenching, which means exposing the bone, just so that it's really just for aesthetics. It looks really nice after it's cooked when you have a nice exposed bone. That's why everyone likes that French rack, because it looks really cool. Cool. So that's the bone-in leg roast. Depending on what size you want, sometimes you might cut this off. I'm just gonna leave it whole just in case somebody wants something that big during the holidays. They might want bigger. Sometimes we'll have to leave the sirloin on and tie it in there. But in this case, I can kind of show you what we do. This is another favorite cut of the butchers, the sirloin roast. Just because it's, I don't know, I like it better than any other cut on the leg. It's really tasty. If I were to do a roast, it's just got a lot of better flavor. Like when, for example, when we do hams on a pork, I like to just use the sirloin area for hams. I think it's got a great fat to meat ratio, and the flavor is just outstanding. You get a lot of cuts that are from the sirloin that are really good, like tri-tips, like for instance on a cow, tri-tips and culottes. That's all sirloin. So this roast kind of has it all. So for legs versus shoulders, personally, I like to dry roast the leg. It's leaner, so I like to roast it to about a medium rare. Whereas shoulders, I like to use for to braise, like braising applications, stews. You can dry roast the shoulder, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that there's a lot more fat in shoulders, so the braising application really helps it break all that fat down.
Someone
Whereas
asked
with
if
the leg, as you can already tell, it's a pretty lean cut, and if you go a little bit farther, it could become dry. So
someone asked if the sirloin was or like the
Sirloin
sirloin cap was the picana.
sirloin cap is on there. That's called also the culotte, and that would be on here as well. So that would be the cap kind of rests on the sirloin, hence the name cap. But those two, that's a really good cut as well. That there, so the other half, this leg, I'll debone it all the way, and I'll show you these leg steaks that are really, really good. There's a few cuts on lamb that kind of you can cook like a quick searing steak. So you'll have like the lamb rack, obviously, you can cook it really quick on a grill or in a pan to a nice medium rare or medium. And then you have like the saddle, which you can do the same. A lot of the other cuts are made for roasting or braising or long cooking applications. This cut I'm not about to show you is really good. Another good searing steak option. And honestly, it goes really fast when people are kind of catching on in our case, they'll see it. Along with the tenderloin too. Tenderloin's a good quick searing steak, but there's not a lot. Just because the lamb's so tiny, a lot of the muscles are grouped together versus on a pig or a cow, you can kind of separate it and get more steaks out of the animal.
So are you
Right
cutting
now-
around a certain muscle?
Yep, right now I am cutting around the shank here. So I'm trying to expose the shank so I can take that out. So just cutting this little muscle off the bone there. I want to keep everything intact because this will be a boneless lamb roast.
Someone asked if you think it's worthwhile to remove the gland from the leg.
Yes, definitely. And we do that here with all our roasts. We search for the glands and take it out just because it's not going to kill you and it's not going to like ruin your meal. It just, if that person gets that bite of gland, it's just going to taste a little weird, but don't think you're going to get sick or anything. It just adds an off flavor to it.
Can you define what the gland is?
Yeah, I'll try to find one for you. Actually, I had a good one on the neck. If I can't find one on here, because sometimes if it's small, it's not big enough, or sometimes they won't, it hasn't developed into a gland yet. So let me real quick, this is the shank. This is called the heel. It's kind of like your calf muscle. You can take it off or you can leave it on to make a bigger shank. Right now, usually we take it off, but I'll leave it on just to kind of show you. Usually we take this little bone off. And again, we don't have that shank from the other one because it's on the actual roast. This is all we have left of it. So that'll probably just go to trim. But yeah, this is another shank. You can French the bone if you want to make it nicer. But usually you just pop that in your braising pan or whatnot. And about 3 hours from now, it'll be a nice meal. Just put that next to these shanks. And then this right here is the rest of the leg. So this is that sirloin area that I made into the roast. Then you have this part is what I wanted to show you. It's called the top round. And that's where we get the leg steaks from. So I'm just gonna seam this out. So whatever is left on here, we usually tie up to make a nice boneless roast. But this, after you take off a few muscles and clean it up. And again, so to your earlier question of taking off the sinew, this is one of the cuts where you want to take off the sinew because you're just quick searing it to medium rare, like you would any other steak. So all this right here, I'll take off. and all that. And some of this stuff is not sinew, it's just from that lamb hanging, just the little dry bits, just from the air. And I just like to take it off because it's not going to do any harm if you leave it on, but it just looks a lot better, a lot nicer. All right. So this is your cleaned up lamb top round. Usually for the case, I'll just square it off there a little bit. And then I'll cut steaks out of it. So for something this size, it kind of just depends how thick you want your steaks, but I could probably get 3 out of here. Nice and lean, but it is tender. So it's not going to be as tender as a tenderloin, but it's still pretty good if you cook it no more than a medium. So here you go. Another great cut that people don't really look for and ask for, but it's tasty. Just gonna move these cuts down here.
Yeah, those look great.
And this just go trim. If you have enough of these, you could make kebabs out of it. But I would just go to trim. Cool. So this one, I won't go into too much detail because it's pretty self-explanatory. It's the lamb rack. It takes a long time to French it down, so I don't want to take time to do that, but it is really tasty as a searing steak. You can roast it. If you get a whole rack, you can roast it whole, but they're very like tiny. It's nice to just kind of cut individual chops or 2-bone chops and just cook that on the grill. It won't take very long. They usually will French it, and I have an example here. So we usually French it down to here. So this will become this. And then when we're ready, we'll take this middle vertebrae out, and then we'll have one rack here and one rack here. And then we'll sell it as a whole rack, or if people want a half rack. So I'm just gonna set that on the side. So this one, the saddle or loin, we either debone it, the whole thing. It's still got the tenderloin on it. So we usually either debone the whole thing to make it a boneless loin or a boneless saddle, or we cut this, or we saw it in half first, and then we cut between each vertebrae. So usually we'll get 5 or 6 saddle chops. And I don't know if you can tell, and I don't know if you picked up earlier when I said this is like what a New York would be on a beef or on a cow, but this would be like a porterhouse because you have your tenderloin and then you have your loin. So usually we try to sell little saddle chops that'll be like little mini porterhouses. It's kind of fun. It's cute when you see it in the case. Obviously, when you get to this end, they become more like T-bones, but they're really tiny. They're like, especially on this lamb, since this was about 60 pounds, each chop will probably be about, I don't know, 1/4 pound. So, yeah, there. So last thing is the shoulder. You can do it bone-in. We've had a lot of customers that if they're just doing a barbecue, they just want a whole bone-in shoulder and throw it on the grill, and that's great. A lot of customers, it's a lot of meat for them, so usually we'll break it down to boneless shoulder or smaller bone-in shoulder cuts, which I'll do. So I'm gonna take it off the bone first. And again, here at the shop, we do 4 bones. So you can, some people do 3, some people do 5. It kind of just depends on what your local butcher does. I'm just gonna cut through here and debone it. You could also cut shoulder chops if you want. We don't really get many orders for that, so we don't typically do that. But again, it's all just preference. There's no wrong way of cutting a lamb. The way I'm doing it and the way you see it today is not like what should be done all the time. It's really just what you want. I think the worst thing to do is to start cutting up an animal without a plan or without knowing what you want, because then you end up just wasting meat.
What do you think is the most popular cut that you guys sell?
It is the rack. It is the rack or the saddle. But you know what? We've been trying to talk to the customers during the winter time. They do tend to buy more of like the boneless belly, even shanks and neck, just from talking to us, because we're not like trying to sell them on anything. They just happen to ask us like, what do you like? And we all agree that the neck is great, especially during the winter time, to braise, and it has great flavor. Sometimes if the neck's too fatty for somebody, I tell them to like braise a neck and a shank, because the shank's a little bit leaner than a neck, and you'll have the best of both worlds. I think the neck tastes better than a shank just because it has that extra fat, and fat does equal flavor. So that's just a personal opinion though. And that's the thing about not just lamb, just it refers to pork and all that. It's really just preference. Like what I like, there's no shame in if it's totally different from what you like.
What is your highest price cut in the case?
Highest prize?
Yeah.
It's the rack, just because it's so expensive and sought after, and also too because as you can see from the rack, a lot of it is bone, so the amount of meat on there is not that much if you really look at it, even with the saddle, versus something like this, you've got a lot more meat than bone. So that's kind of why it's more expensive. And with the Frenching, it takes a lot of labor from the butchers. So we have to add that in and allocate for that. I would say, yeah, that's probably the most prized. But if you're talking to a butcher, probably the neck or the ribs or the belly would be the most prized cut. Just that. So that's the neck going into the neck. Here. You could fit somewhere like that, but that was what it was going into, and then this goes into the rack. It's just the shoulder bone. So this is the whole bone in shoulder, which is a little intimidating. Oh, to that person who asked about glands, this is a gland right here. I don't know if you can see it. There's actually 2 and then a little blood clot, but it doesn't look great. So that's why we cut it off. Again, like I don't know if every grocery store will cut it off. You might find it if you buy it from, I don't know, a King Super or Whole Foods. Here we'll cut it out, but again, like it won't make you sick or anything, but it just tastes a little off. So a lot of people like to buy like this again, like I was referring to, smoking it whole during the summer and then just picking off the meat. it's a little intimidating for some people. So what we like to do is cut in half. And I'm going to refer to the pork because people know this cut a lot better on the pork. This would be the Boston butt of a pork. And it's really tasty. If you were to braise any type of lamb shoulder cut, it would be this highly sought after piece. A lot of grind, I think, are made from this whole shoulder just because you can see there's a lot of good fat to meat ratio. I'm just gonna take this little patty whack out. This is the tendon. It's really tough. It's the tendon that holds up the neck when lambs are going down to eat their grass and food. That's why it's really, really tough. You could tow a car with it. But what I like to do is dehydrate it and kind of just give it to my dog. They love this stuff. And I think it's nutritious for them. They love it. It tastes really good. But
Sorry to go back to the gland thing, but can you
Yeah.
describe its function?
of glands,
Yeah.
I honestly don't know the function of glands. I think they're just like little pockets of, don't know a good word term for it, but just pockets of pus, I guess. That would be a terrible word to describe it. I don't think they really have a function. Because
I just Googled it and it just says,
some you have a hormones or just hormones. Okay. Yeah, because it's odd because sometimes we'll get in lamb that have way bigger glands and lamb that don't really have that much. So it just kind of just depends. Not just on the lamb, but also on pork and beef. There's different sizes. Sometimes we'll find one in a really odd spot. There's another one right there. So cut that out. So this is a nice bone-in shoulder. Again, you can roast the shoulder. This would be totally fine. We would tie it up for you and it would be really tasty. But I like to use it to braise carnitas, anything. Smoke it, that'd be really good. And then this right here, usually, so we'll break the shoulder in half. We'll have a bone-in roast, and then usually I'll take the bone out of here and have a nice small boneless roast. Just so it's a little less intimidating for people who are cooking at home.
how does leaving the bones in affect cook time?
How do the bones affect cook time?
Yes.
So it heats up more than the meat. It honestly will probably cook a little bit faster, but not anything drastic. I'd say a boneless roast versus a bone-in roast would probably cook, if they were about the same size, they'll probably cook about, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes faster. But nothing really different from anything. It's kind of like, I guess you have like chicken or turkey. Yeah, the parts with the bone will always cook a little bit faster. So you kind of have to be aware. That's why on chicken or turkey, you just have to be aware of like what's drying out or not. But for lamb roast or pork roast or beef roast, there's not really much of a difference. And usually when you're cooking like a bone-in beef roast, you don't really find like bone-in except for like a ribeye. And then in that case, the bones are on the outside, not necessarily in. There's a lot of roast, you want to slice it after it's cooked. So if you have a bone in the middle, it'll be really hard to slice. So usually any roasts are going to be mostly boneless, unless it's the ribeye, you can easily take out that bone on the outside. Other than that, if you are cooking a bone-in roast, you're usually cooking it past to where you're almost braising it. And at that point, you don't really have to worry about cooking times because you're kind of cooking it past the usual time. So I just took out the top of the scapula there, and then below the arm bone, that would just go to roast. And then here, there's just some muscles that we like to take out. There's another gland right there. This is a little abductor muscle that has a lot of sinew in there. I like to take that one out too. And anything that would kind of shape it, make it misshapen, I like to just take it off. There's a nice little gland here too. So I'll probably take this little guy off there. Shape it up like that. That'll be really nice in the oven or in your pot. And all that I cut out does not go to waste. Again, it goes to shrimp.
I have a couple general questions for you just while you're tying that up.
Yeah.
Someone said they find it difficult sawing the vertebrae. Do you usually use a hand saw or a band saw when doing that?
This, you're referring to this, right?
I'm assuming
We
so.
usually use a hand saw. Well, we don't have a band saw. So we hand saw everything here. It's tough because there's this bone here and then another bone here. And not only we have to get through all that, we have to make sure it's straight. So it is tough. And my butchers have been asking me to when we're going to get a band saw, but it's possible. So I kind of tell them I've been doing it for 6 years, so they can wait a little bit longer.
Next question is, what's the best steak from the shoulder blade or the arm?
So I would say that cut that I was telling you earlier, a little shoulder cut. It's called a blade steak. It's right here. You can see it. And you can cut between. So if I had that, just kind of give you a view here. This is another one you have to cut along the vertebrae and then cut chops this way, which is possible. We've done before. It just takes a little more effort, but that's a nice little blade chop there. And then also you can also get shoulder chops out of this guy too. This one's a little more leaner than this, so I like this one better because it has a little bit more fat. But you know, again, if we're talking about shoulder chops, whether it be the blade or this one, personally, nothing in comparison to the leg steaks. These are really tasty. The shoulder is going to be a little bit more tough, just because it has more muscles, connecting muscles within it, versus like a leg steak. It's one muscle, one or two. You might get a little bit of another muscle on there, but it's just a lot more tender. But not to say these aren't good. You have to know that you're going to get something a little bit more toothy on the shoulder. Which is probably another reason why people haven't ventured out from like a rack or a tenderloin, is because all these other cuts, not to say they're tough, they're just toothy is probably the best word I can describe it. You're going to have like chew a little bit more than normal than you would on a tenderloin. And I feel like a lot of people nowadays don't. That's not what people like. So they tend to stay away from that. And they use these cuts to braise more. So it's fork tender. But I don't know. I feel like when you have a little bit of toothiness on your steaks, you have to chew it a little bit more. It brings out the flavor. You don't eat it so fast. You're kind of just enjoying the flavor of the steak.
Do you have a favorite marinade for your chops?
Oh man, I honestly, with any lamb, I'm kind of classic. I like the rosemary, thyme, and garlic on lamb. It's so good. And mint's good too. Mint on there or any kind of curry. If you want to break out the traditional, curry is really, really good. Cumin, any type of those spices. Um, paprika, little chili powder, a little bit cayenne. But yeah, curry's really good on there. All right. So move this down. So I'm just gonna leave this whole lamb shoulder bone in. When we do it boneless, it's usually this, just times 2, bigger. But I'm just gonna leave it bone in to give another variety on the board. Just take that little piece out there. Yeah. That's the whole lamb. Again, there are many ways to cut this. This is just typically what we do here. And again, there's nothing wrong. Like for instance, if you love lamb tenderloins, you can take it out all the way. Like take it from here. That's what would be the first thing you do is take that tenderloin along with this whole thing, and you'd have a nice tenderloin about this big, that wide, and then just know that you won't have those like chops on there. You could still have a chop on there, but you won't have the tenderloin on it. You could make a boneless loin. Just know that what you take off will affect another cut. Like for instance, you can take this whole all this meat from the ribs and put it on your belly meat, on the bone rolled and tied belly, so you have a nice fatter bone rolled and tied belly. But that's all preference. Again, like the shank too, you could take off the heel to have a smaller shank portion, whatever you want, debone the neck. But this is just one way of doing it. Really, there's so many different ways. Yeah. Any other questions? Anything I missed? I don't know if I was speaking too fast or anything you want me to refer back to.
I don't see any pending questions currently. People really love it and think you did a beautiful job though.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you so much. Glad to do it. I wish I could show you all the different applications. There's just not enough time to like cut another lamb a different way. But like again, I can't stress enough like how this is just one type of way, and there's so many ways to do it, and they're all good. Again, like they're all any way to cut a lamb, any way, any type of meat that you like. They're all great. It's all preference. Just make sure. I think the most important thing is to go out there and buy meat. Try to buy meat that's local. Try to source locally and support those local ranchers, because I mean, I've definitely shopped at like regular grocery stores too, but the best feeling is when you've met the rancher or know at least a little history of it from looking up online and then trying their meats, and it's just a full circle, really good, tasty piece of meat for your meal.
Totally. We did get a couple questions come in.
Yeah.
Someone asked if you had any tips for like offal, like heart, tongue, cheeks.
Yeah, I honestly don't. Well, for the only thing I have is liver. I personally don't like kidneys or hearts. to each their own. But for liver, I love to put it in, we usually do like a country pate, which is cooked in, it's almost like a cooked pressed meatloaf, if you will. And part of that grind is liver of any kind. So you can make a lamb country pate using ground lamb, but a portion of that ground lamb will be ground liver. And it just adds a nice flavor to it without overpowering it. I know people usually you have to soak all your offal in milk or water overnight to kind of remove the impurities. But I know people use it for different applications as far as making certain terrines. I know people just saute it up in salt and pepper and just eat it like that. They'll add it to stews. A big one though, people will ask us to make a grind out of it. If we can take hearts, livers, and kidneys and make a grind out of it, which is possible. We do custom grinds here, minimum of 10 pounds. But yeah, we usually get those orders for beef, not really lamb, but you can still do it for lamb. They're just tinier. So I think people go to beef more because they're just bigger. And I think people in this town are still getting accustomed to that lamb flavor that is still present even in the offal parts. They still have that little bit of lamb taste. So people don't really, dig it that much.
All right, I'm just going to give you one more question and then we
course.
can go ahead and move on to who's winning some lamb. Someone asked like what your average cut time is, and is it easier to cut when the meat is cold?
Yes. Well, second question, yes, it's definitely easier to cut when the meat's cold, but also from a safety food standard, it shouldn't warm up at all. But if it ever does, I mean, the fat would kind of melt and get all greasy, and it just doesn't feel good. It's a lot stiffer when it's cold. And then, sorry, what was the first question?
Like your average cut time, I guess. Yeah.
Probably if we didn't have to explain it and we're just going to break it down in those first subprimals, probably I think a time before maybe like 10 minutes. And then to break it down further into these roasts, probably another hour. Just because we're doing more intricate work. We're doing like taking out the sinew and the silver skins and just making sure it's perfect. Like these two alone, like I was saying earlier, like that'll take a lot of time, Frenching it and sawing it, especially since we only have hand saws. Huh?
Totally.
Oh yeah. Want me to put it on the front? Just a example. I mean, it's a lot. It doesn't look like much, but to get a nice clean bone, we have to almost like rub our knife against it. There's many different methods to get that bone clean, but it takes a little while to get it nice and clean like that. It's not like when I was cleaning this guy up, because it's so tiny one and it's bigger, but now you got like 9 intricate, smaller, kind of more fragile bones. So you want to be a little more careful on these. So that'll take up the most time, I'd say. But if we're cutting bone in, like mostly bone in, that'll take a lot less time. Like me cutting this into 3 versus deboning it. Like cutting it like this took, I don't know, 2 minutes at the most. If I had to debone it, it'd probably take 10 minutes or so, 8 to 10, because it's so intricate. So it kind of just depends.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was really amazing.
Yeah.